Hi everyone, Christina Werner here. Welcome to another video for SimonsStamp.com. Today I'm using the Full of Thanks stamp set that comes in the November 2022 card kit. There is a stencil set that goes with this one if you want to use it to help you color, but for me today I'm going to be doing some watercolor painting. I'm using Arches cold press watercolor paper that I've cut down to a smaller size, and then I'm using a brown permanent ink, a waterproof ink from Versafine to stamp my image. I'm stamping that down, and because it is a very textured cardstock or paper, I'm actually going to stamp it a couple of times so that I can get a really solid line. So I'll stamp that down once again. Now, because I did stamp it twice, I will need to kind of heat set this and help it to dry before I start painting. Speaking of painting, today I'm using the Karin Brushmarker Pro markers. I'm using the colors olive black, gold, amber, lipstick red, and cocoa. I'm also going to bring in one more additional color once I start painting because I wanted to bring in just a little bit of a purple shade. So here I am just hitting that with my heat tool until it was all completely dried. And then I'm bringing in the color lilac. So I'm going to start painting, and I started on the background or the area around the image by wetting it with water. And then I'm bringing in the markers and touching the tip of the marker to the water and letting it wick away. I'm going to do most of the painting like that and do layers of color. I'm going to speed up the video and turn on some music so you can enjoy all of the painting. After all of the painting was complete, I stamped my greeting on the front using a greeting stamp from the stamp set. I prepped the area with an anti-static powder tool and then inked up my stamp with VersaMark ink. I also stamped this one twice so that it would be a nice solid line. I then coated the stamped area with a gold embossing powder. This is the color Gilded from Brutus Monroe. And then I'm going to hit that with my heat tool until all of the powder is melted. Now it was showing up pretty well, but I wanted it to show up even more. So I scribbled one of the darker markers, I think I used a brown shade, onto an acrylic block and picked that up with a paintbrush and just started to paint that right around the letters and spreading it around with a little bit of water. And that really darkened up the area around the gold embossing so that it was a little bit more legible. This was a great way to sort of add a shadow to the greeting and help it to stand out. I also trimmed down my watercolor piece so it's a little bit smaller and then added some gold detailing on the edges. I used a distress embossing dabber to add that ink to the edges, just run that along the edge, and then dipped my piece into my embossing, just the container of embossing powder. For areas that were a little bit too thick with embossing powder, I used a clean, dry brush to sweep away any of that excess powder. And then I used my heat tool to melt all the embossing powder on the edges of the cardstock. This just gives the edge a really nice gold shade and it just really accents everything. I'm now using royal purple cardstock from SSS Stamp to create a background to go behind my watercolor piece. I'm also using the tufted embossing folder from Spellbinders to add a fun texture. So I'm spraying the front and back of my cardstock with a mist of water. That's going to help the cardstock kind of bend and mold to this embossing powder. Or I'm sorry, the embossing folder. I ran that through my die cutting machine, and now I have this very detailed tufted texture. Now this purple's really, really bright, and so I'm going to tone it back by putting a little bit of Picket Fence Studios paper glaze. And this is in the color Black Pansy. I'm going to water down a little bit of the paper glaze just so it's a little bit more fluid. And then I'll be applying it right over my embossed cardstock, just using my fingertips. So I just dipped my finger in my cup of water that I was using for my painting. And this just gets this a little bit more fluid and it kind of makes it even more transparent than it already was. So I'm going to start smearing this all over my cardstock. I'm just doing this on top of a paper towel just so I can go right off the edge. I love this look, and I was most definitely inspired by some techniques that Simon Hurley and Jennifer McGuire have been showing recently, and they actually used Simon Hurley's lunar paste for this. I don't have any lunar paste, so I went through my stash and found this paper glaze, and it worked really, really well. Taking that black and just running it right over that purple cardstock. It dries fairly quickly, and I was able to trim down my cardstock right away and adhere that to a card front. I love how that looks. It looks like it's glowing from within. So I'm making an unusual card size today, but it does fit into a 5x7 envelope or an envelope made for a 5x7 card. But it's just a little bit oversized and almost square, but not quite. I put some foam adhesive on the back of my watercolor piece and then put that down right over that embossed textured background. So that's my card for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you check out the card kit for November 2022. You can buy the stamp set outside of the card kit or with the card kit. And I've got all those links down below for you to click over and do a little bit of shopping. Thanks so much for watching today, and I will catch you guys in another video very soon.